What is up, grinders? Welcome back to another episode of the MMA Crunch Time Before Lock. I am your host, Mike Brown, aka H3 Buddha, here with my pal Squirrel Patrol. 2 weeks ago, I feel like it was last week. We've been on the MMA grind for a bit now, but a week off, it makes you want a card. And what do we get dealt? We were supposed to have 2 5-round fights. Squirrel, 2 5-round fights would have been incredible, but we're stuck with a 12-fight card, mixed bag, a couple fights that are, pink slip fights, I will say. Very interesting card. What's your evaluation of DARIUSH versus TSARUKYAN in Texas? It is Texas Commission. People are not talking about how sometimes Texas decisions can go wild.
Yeah, this is not the highest quality card. I mean, the main event
card is.
Yeah, the main event is fine.
Yeah.
But like you said, like some pink slip fights. Like there are some fighters. Like was it Wellington Termon? I looked at it, like 9,000. Is that an error? What's going on? But yeah, he's facing Jared Gooden. So it's not the highest quality card, but there's still the DFS contests are still the same. And actually, I think it gives us some opportunities, some edge. Like I think these fights are a little bit closer than because they're sometimes when you have the fights where it's two like kind of low quality fighters, the line's kind of close. So it makes it pretty interesting. I think like TSARUKYAN's probably gonna win the main event. The odds indicate that. Good chance of putting up a high score. But that doesn't always happen. I mean, you could have like a dominant 3-round, fight, 3-round
look
finish.
Above them. That's a point, right? Your point is Reese, Soriano, Bellato.
Yeah, like so TSARUKYAN could put up a high score, but not necessarily end up on the winning lineup. So it's an interesting card.
Absolutely, I think it kind of is. From a standpoint of, do you go just jam in as a TSARUKYAN, or how do you build your lineup? So we'll get to that in a few minutes. But we have to say, TJ, last card we had John down in Miami. We had Liam on the show. TJ, how much about MMA?
Less than zero. Zero is not even is too much. The last fight that I can genuinely say I remember sitting down and watching to completion was Alistair Overeem versus Brock Lesnar.
Wow.
So that was probably about 10 years ago. I used to watch a lot of GSP fights. He's Canadian. He was in Captain America, the Winter Soldier. Amazing movie. So I would catch GSP's fights, but yeah, don't know the scoring system. Don't know how much anything is worth. Just plugged. You had 5 conviction plays on Lineup HQ, Mike. I plugged in all 5 of them. Liam had one
Jekka
pick with a guy,
Surrogate.
Surrogate, whose name I could never remember. 6% owned. Ended up 100xing my entry fees. Turned $30 into $3K.
John, we have a tall task to try to trump that, but I think this card, TJ, if you're gonna shoot a couple lineups in, you can get crazy. And I'm gonna let John kind of go the build up, how you're gonna build your lineups, because the middle range is where we make our money week in and week out, right? I mean, I think we know that, but I think you can make a case of 3 for 3, like 3 dog lineup might actually be in play this week.
Yeah, for the record, I came disturbingly close to wearing a I Am Knuff hoodie when I did the show because it's part of my daughter's Barbie costume, and I'm a little bit chilly in here in my office, so I almost threw it on because it's right behind the screen. Anywho, that would have been awkward. But
I got this for my wife for her birthday, and then I think I've ended up wearing it more than she has.
Yeah. I think the mid-range, I think you actually said it. I like the mid-range, I think, a little bit more because I think it's going to go really overlooked. I think some of these expensive fighters, and certainly some of the expensive fighters are going to, have big wins and end up on the winning lineup. These guys are a little bit suspect in my mind. So I kind of like the mid-range. I think that all the middle-range fighters are going to be a little bit under-owned. I like the underdogs a lot. If our projected ownership is correct, and I have no reason to think that it's going to be way off on anything, we have some big leverage opportunities. I think we have the
that's where you get the leverage in the middle range.
Yeah.
And what are you quantifying as the middle range? I'm going from Horth down. that's where I'm quantifying as a middle range, because I feel like there's a blurred line. The values start coming into play when you attack the font side and attack the Avila. Those obviously Figueiredo is going to eat up the ownership as an underdog, I think. Would you agree with that? It's kind of from Horth down in middle range.
I even go a little bit higher. I don't mind like Font. I think Font's going to be. It's hard to say. It could be underowned because like Figueiredo has like such win equity, and it's the line's been kind of moving that way. He's only 7,400, so I think like he could end up being overowned, especially in like the higher dollar stuff. I think so. Font is an interesting leverage play, but like as the line keeps moving, I feel less and less safe about it. Avila, probably the fighter that like a lot of people are going to avoid. I might end up like I put her in the expert survey as the fighter I'm like most going to avoid, and that's probably going to be true, but I still might be over the field. Like if she's like coming in at like 12-15%. So
it's house shot, right? We have two spots on this card. How shot are these people, right? We have the Avila Tate fight. Tate hasn't been looking great. Avila coming off of having a child, 220 pounds, had to cut all that weight, got back into shape. But I mean, she has the most ring rust on the card. Then you look at a Joaquin Silva versus Guida, two fighters in their own right that may be a little bit long in the tooth, a lot. And then you have like what question marks. I mean, I'm not going to group this fight in. I'm just going to throw it in there from a durability standpoint. And gas tank is the Reese versus Brundage. I'm just throwing that one in there because I feel like we don't know what Zach Reese is going to be like down the stretch. And then we know what we have in Brundage. Brundage is not the best chin in the world. So it's a weird context slate when you have like a lot of variability within what's going to be showing up in the cage, right?
Yeah, like the Brundage Reese fight is interesting. I wonder if like Brundage's last like win, if you want to call it that, is like throwing off like algorithms and stuff. Like he was basically getting hit so frequently, like his opponent, but his opponent was the biggest favorite on the card and started like slipping and kind of hitting him in the back of the head. And he got a warning, right? But he kept doing it. And then it was a disqualification. Like, so Brundage got the first round win. Like, that's not the best first round win I've seen.
No.
So like, I feel like it's like throwing off the odds in the algorithms or something. Like Brundage has like a 15% chance of winning in the first round. That's high. I mean, I think that's maybe more of a testament to like Reese's, the possibility that Reese just goes in and totally busts. But Reese obviously has one of the highest first round finish odds on the slate. But like I'm going to be over the field on Brundage just kind of based on the odds. Another guy that I'm going to be over the field on is Potiera. Is 6,600.
Yeah.
Like we have him like 8% ownership, and he's got a 25% chance of winning the fight at $6,600. Like if he wins at 6,600, he's got a really good chance of ending.
It's rare you and I are tagging two different people on the same fight, and that's how compelling this fight is, right? All the equity is baked into, I'd say, one of two things, right? It's coming out hot, either guy, and then you have the equity. I'd have to say Pilato, deeper the fight goes, might cook Potiera, right? Like we've seen him fall off a cliff, but that equity at 6,600 that he could come out hot and actually hurt Pilato. Pilato's been finished before. So yeah. I actually understand you tagging Potiera, and lineup builds with him. Oh my God. I mean, you can do whatever you want. Yeah,
exactly. And like, we usually see like a $6,600 fighter with about a 10% chance of winning the fight. Potiera has got a 10% chance of winning the fight in the first round and has about a 23-25% chance of winning the fight overall. That's really good for 6,600. Like usually these, those super cheap fighters, we're saying like, well, they've got about a 1 in 10 chance of winning the fight, and they're only gonna be like 6% owned, so you've got some leverage there or whatever. But like it's gonna take you a bunch of cards to like meet that equity. This one, I don't know. I think the guys at the top of the card are suspect, and that gives like I'm not crazy about the underdogs, but like just the variability, means we could have an interesting outcome on this league.
100%. And there's just so much of that one of these guys is going to go. And Punahale Soriano is a guy up here. I feel like, I don't know if he's a trap or what, because it seems like he's going to be the faster guy. He's going to have the heavier hands. He's going to have wrestling in his back pocket. He might even have an opponent that's more apt to go on his back and fish for a submission and give us top control. It's a very interesting spot, 9,400. That $200 difference is where I almost feel like I have would rather go with the Soriano. So then you got like, the Turmans of the world, the Silvas. That's how weird this is. You nailed it, right? Like Wellington Turman shouldn't be 9K. If we had dynamic pricing, I imagine he'd be in the middle range because he's just not a commodity. First of all, that scores very well. Second of all, that has the best chin in the world. The guy has been knocked out many times and hurt after dominating a first round. So I like that you tagged Gooden. Gooden is an upside play from any standpoint. You have to say he has first round equity. He has knockout ability, probably further on than people think in this fight.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like if you wake up tomorrow and read, or see that, or remember that like Wellington Drummond got like knocked out in the first round. Are you going to be shocked? Like, no, of course not. Like this fight seems like it should be more of a toss up. And like, I mean, I just remember all of the color in the last couple of Wellington fights, right? That he's just not that good, and he's gone out and lost like the last couple of fights. And so like I looked at the app, and I'm like, he's 9,000. Like, why is he 9,000?
Yeah.
I was trying to remember, did he like pull a big upset in his last fight or something? Like no, he didn't. He just
it's bias.
It's
the takedown. It's the takedown bias, right? Against
Gooden. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't see like why Gooden should be such a big underdog in this fight. It's just a low quality fight. It's just one of those things where anything can happen. So, like, given that, I'd rather take the $7,200 fighter and see what else I can get in my lineups.
You know what you get off of is you get off of the chalk underdogs, the Tate and the Figueiredo. And let me give a case for the Figueiredo spot and Font. I feel like that fight has more bustability than people think. Would you agree with that? If it goes 3 rounds and it ends up being a striking affair, there's a world where that ends up being 70 points and a decision win. And honestly, even if Figueiredo gets a takedown in the first round and Font wins this fight, I think it stalls out the scoring from a macro standpoint. Then you look at the Tate spot. I think that's the biggest interesting ownership because we're showing 20% ownership on this fight. I just don't know. I think Tate's going to be higher. I think there's more love for her.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I agree. I looked at the Figueiredo fight and I thought like, oh, okay, like a lot of win equity. So maybe I should try to get over the field on Font, but I agree. Like there's a chance the fight just busts. And then a bunch of people that are both trying to get the win equity or trying to get the leverage are sitting there with, a 70-point win in their lineups. And I agree. I think Tate, like I did tag Tate. I think she's going to get some steam, I guess, as an underdog, right? Because like people don't like Avila.
Question marks.
Yeah. So, and again, it's kind of like a low quality fight. But it
can be a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like those can be high scoring. But it's more, kind of anything can happen. Tate's got the better strength of competition in the past. But yeah, I guess I didn't hear. So you just heard you mentioning on the ground and pound that she was like up to 225 pounds.
Yep.
And she's like cutting like 135. After the pregnancy. So that's got to be rough. But it looks like she did it okay. But yeah, I don't know. Like maybe that's a fight where you want to be under the field on. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, very odd card for sure. But there are 2 grappling heavy based fights in the middle range where we talk about, I was scared to even tag Sean Brady. Were you? I mean, this guy had been an absolute monster for us for our fantasy lineups, averaging 86 points per fight, basically getting you 100 points every time out there in a finish or even a decision. Now he's not getting a ton of love, 26% owned against Gastelum. I just worry about Gastelum's ceiling. He's going to be 20%. And then Joe Selecki's right there. You and I both tagged him. I mean, this guy is an interesting case, right? He's a grappling heavy, not pitter patter, right? He'll get the position and then hold you and not get that little extra scoring. That's what frustrates me because if we tag him and he scores 65 points in a control-based 25 significant strike, we'll look like dum-dums. But it's too good of a spot to ignore. I mean, his win equity, his path of victory is too strong. And then let's talk about the close side of things. Like if he gets a finish, that'd be killing off a ton of ownership on Joe Selecki. So it's a very interesting slate from that standpoint because I could see either of those 2 fights finishing, and I could see it being the striker killing off some of that grappling equity.
Yeah, but I think it might go a little bit under-owned, just sitting in the mid-range, because people don't like the mid-range because of the uncertainty. Like when you click on a $9,600 fighter, you feel like it's a guaranteed win. Or, if you click on a $9,400 fighter, you feel like it's a guaranteed win. But again, at the end of the night, we're going to have, probably 11 or 12 winners, right? And, the guys in the mid-range and their wins have just about the same amount, of chance of putting up a high score in a win as the $9,600, $9,400 guys. So this fight could end up like if Selecki doesn't get the pitter patter, right? It could end up being a bust, but any of the fights can end up being a bust. So
how are you prioritizing those four? Close, Brady, Gastelum, Selecki, because I almost feel like, dare I say, Gastelum probably has the best upside of all of them, because Sean Brady last fight out laid a goose egg for us as a power grappler. He couldn't get the takedowns against Muhammad. Muhammad takes him out. He's got a nose problem. I don't know where he's at. There's a lot of question marks.
Yeah, so I think they're all going to be owned about the same amount. I probably like the savings on Selecki a little bit more. I mean, it's not huge, but it still gives you a little bit of something. And he can put up the grappling points. Then it's maybe Sean Brady, then Close, and then probably Gastelum. But I mean, all these guys are pretty close. So it's tough to differentiate.
Pun intended, for sure.
Yeah.
Make sure you guys are giving this a like and telling a friend about it, because we're 10 minutes out before lock. Eye on the news. So far, so good here. But this broadcast is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel Sportsbook. Bet $5 on any money line. Get $150 in bonus bets if your team wins. For new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 plus. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Or in Boston, it'd be Gambler, but that's neither here or there. And if you're having some bonus bets, what are you sniffing out this week? I know you're not a bettor; you're more on the side of fantasy. But the first fight of the night is the one that's getting a lot of love. I don't know if I've seen so much money movement the week of a fight. I mean, Jamie Lynn Horth has a ton of equity now, money line equity.
Yeah, I saw that. I don't know what to make of it. We've kind of commented on the show that that's a bad sign for the for the opponent generally. Like more so than like if Horth ends up with like a 55% like implied win probability or whatever, like the late movement seems like it should make that more. I think what is Horth at? She's up to about a 62% implied win probability. I think this is like an even money fight at the start of the week. Like that is a dramatic movement. I think you generally do better, like kind of going with this theme there rather than trying to go against it, right? Like
it's an ugly spot too. That's what's even more confusing. But I feel like Horth is the more aggressive fighter, the fighter that's going to push the pace out there. So I feel like she'll win rounds. But it seems like the technical side of things might actually be on Hardy's side. That's what's tricky about it from the X's and O's. But it's not like Hardy, I think, is going to destroy a slate in any type of win. She could get stalled out in that first round. That's the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because like the line movement is really interesting. I don't know that's a huge fight for our DFS lineups. But you just never know. Like you never know.
Cash play. Cash lineups are going to lock in Horth right now.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because you've got the win equity on both her and Figueiredo. But yeah, I mean, you never know when somebody's going to slip on a banana peel either, right? As Liam says. And literally, we've seen it before. Was the Estela Nunez Dudakova fight, right? Where she just fell down, dislocated her elbow, and then Dudakova had like 120 point score. So yeah, I mean, I think she got even got a knockdown on that. So you never know, and there's something to be said for just like trying to pick winners. We have a better indication of who's going to win each fight than we do of how the scoring is going to go. I think we overestimate our ability to say how the scoring is going to go. So there's something to be said for just taking the steam with Horth there on both like the betting side and the DFS side.
honestly wish the steam happened like last week, so we didn't have her at 26% owned. But there's a fight that a gentleman made weight. We were all concerned. Jalen Turner made weight, 8,900. I expect him to be damn popular. The guy puts up a monster score in all of his finishes. Here's something that people are not looking at. He's not going to score as well as he has in the past if it goes to a decision. I just don't think he's got the volume to get there, John. And if you look at the Bobby Green side of things, I actually think he's sneaky win equity on this slate. I mean, I don't think you necessarily need it because we talked about the Tate, the Figueiredo, the Gooden type of upside, but Bobby Green's an interesting case on this slate because Turner has slowed down the deeper the fight goes. He has to make weight. He's huge.
Yeah, I've got more Bobby Green than Jalen Turner. I think like Jalen Turner like wasn't expecting this fight, right? Like it was was it Dan Hooker that pulled out?
Yep. Yeah.
So I mean, Hooker beat Jalen Turner last fight, and Jalen Turner looked great at the start of the fight. And I think I was like overweight on Jalen Turner in that spot. I think it was a pay-per-view card. And Hooker ended up coming back, and even with a broken arm, I think beat Jalen Turner. And Turner wasn't expecting this fight, and from like the press conference, it seems like the UFC kind of called him and said like Bobby Green is an opponent. You got to get in there. So I don't know, like it's not like I'd kind of rather hear some more aggression, and like, yeah, I was sitting at home, but so excited UFC, called me and gave me this opportunity and looking forward to like just going out and killing them. It's kind of like, yeah, I didn't want to be here, but I kind of have to be. So, and late notice is not always the best, circumstance to be accepting a fight to begin with.
What's Bobby Green doing outside the cage? Did you see that come across your Twitter feed?
The Armin Sarukian like hotel.
Thing. I mean, hey, it's great if Bobby wins or has a little bit more motivation, wins, he can call out Armin in the main event. Like there's some story building there.
Ooh, yeah, I tend to not like pay that much attention to that stuff just because like
it's noise, of course.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a bunch of hotel run-ins we don't hear about, right? But yeah, I mean that's actually a good point that there could be some kind of story building there. If you kind of buy into that narrative of UFC pulling some strings or whatever. So but I think Bobby Green's like a pretty big name to begin with. So yeah, I got more Bobby Green than Jalen Turner in this spot.
Yeah, it makes a hell of a lot of sense. And I'm gonna go over one more fight before bringing in TJ, but Joaquin Silva versus Clay Guida. On any other slate, I feel like we could get some lower ownership on Silva. Do you agree? Like Silva at 30%, I feel like he's a sneaky upside play because he's got jiu-jitsu in his back pocket. The path of victory, Clay Guida just kind of sits. He doesn't score. His hair is flopping everywhere. And he's long in the tooth. I mean, this guy is, he's got to be pushing 40 at this stage. He doesn't stop. He continues moving forward. But then you got Silva, who's like a knockdown power striker, jiu-jitsu guy. It's a weird dynamic to fight, which I understand could fall through the cracks, but I just feel like the ownership isn't as high as I wish it was.
Yeah, I think like I think I'm a little bit over the field on Silva. I just think he's going to get lost. Like I think you said, like he's going to this fight's going to maybe slip through the cracks. Like Silva's got about a 30% first round finish odds. So I'll take that. And I think people are going to go to the more expensive fighters, thinking like that means they're more expensive, so it means they're definitely going to put up a higher score. I don't know. Like all these guys are about the same, so I'd maybe take the savings on Silva. So I'm a little bit over the field on Silva. I think he's going to be about 30% owned. I think that's about right. So it might be a little bit higher. Guida tends not to score well. So, not my favorite underdog on the card.
Yeah, no, if Silva was a little bit more durable problems, I mean, he just faced TSARUKYAN and survived. So that was a killer spot.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. It's such a jumbled card that there's not a lot of differentiation other than like the main event. But I think people are going to look at the prices and try to create some differentiation. Just thinking the more expensive fighters are.
I'm not jamming main event. I wouldn't jam main event this particular card. I don't know of what your style of play would be, but like I don't think it's necessary. The problem with the dynamic is TSARUKYAN's a damn monster. He's got an endless ceiling. That's the problem when you do fade it.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, like Tsarukyan's one of my higher owned fighters, but I've got less of him than I do most like main event favorites. And same thing with Dariush. I mean, he's one of my higher owned like underdogs, but I've got less of him than I would most like main event underdogs. Particularly for a fight that has a chance of going to the full 5 rounds. You end up with the possibility there's like that 4th round finish or something that basically does nothing.
Yeah.
I expect Tsarukyan to win, but I'm a little bit concerned he gets like that 3rd or 4th round finish, where it just ends up being like any other fight on the card.
It negates itself. TJ, minute and a half. Any last second questions with our favorite MMA guy coming in here? 3 lineups today. Woo!
I'm an expert now. I'm playing 3, not just 1. There, I saw some overlay going, so I wanted to play a little bit more. I'm channeling my inner squirrel. That's one of the reasons I'm really good at DFS is because here, like what did I do last week? I just listened to you and Liam and it worked. But in general, throughout baseball season, I knew nothing about baseball, and I just fairly religiously followed what Dave Potts, Jesus Good, was doing all the time. I read the musings every single day until I understood how I wanted to play DFS. And one of the things I've picked up from Squirrel is make sure you check those qualifier tabs right before lock, and if there's any overlay, hammer them. And so I'm doing that again today. That's what ended up getting me 5 tickets into the 4-4-4-4 Millie Maker on DraftKings tomorrow. So did it again for the MMA slate. 3 lineups. I honestly don't really know if I'm chalky or not, but they look pretty darn good to me.
That's what matters. If they look good, right? And then when you flip over the cards and you see the ownership, you're like, uh-oh.
For what it's worth, I don't love that the last thing you guys said is like, maybe you don't actually need the main event fight. And I do have Tsarukyan on 3 of 3 teams, but
the smaller the field, the more viable that main event has to be in your lineups and your builds.
Cool. That makes me feel better.
I think like the larger the field, I think there's a chance that the main event is overowned in like the largest field contest. I think it generally is. But in smaller field, you can often get away with it. Like you don't have to get the perfect score, and it has a better chance of putting up like a pretty good score. So
and there's so many good options.
I was gonna see if the ownerships were up yet, but they are not quite yet. They haven't uploaded.
They take a few seconds, but next week, 10 fights. That's why I wanted to get you in there, this card, TJ. Next week, 10 fights, not the best in the world. It's not a 3 a.m. card, John. We thought it was going to be. So we end up having a show, 2 next week in the pay-per-view card, both going to be 6 p.m. locks. So we will take you into those locks. But for producer TJ, John, and myself, if we don't win, we want you guys to. We'll see you guys next week.